Welcome to the Hidden Horror, the spot where you find creepy stories that will keep you up at night. Turn off the lights and lock the doors. Tonight we delve into 5 chilling tales of terror, from paranormal encounters to murderous mysteries. Creepy stories that will make your skin crawl as we journey into the macabre unknown. Prepare for the terror, real or imagined if you dare. Let's begin. The first story begins with the old Victorian mansion on the edge of town had been empty for years. Locals said it was haunted, cursed, possessed, whatever you wanted to call it. Strange noises came from inside at all hours, the banging, crashing, disembodied voices. The townspeople avoided it like the plague. James said he had snuck inside once on a dare when he was a teenager. He lasted 10 minutes before running out the back door, pale as a sheet. He swore he heard a woman singing, but the place was deserted. There was a shattered mirror in the foyer and strange symbols carved into the walls. Years later, Mike decided to see for himself what was going on. He managed to get his hands on a digital recorder and asked the owner if he could come do an EVP session, also known as an electronic voice phenomenon, trying to capture the voices of ghosts. The owner shrugged and said, "Be my guest. Just watch your back." So one night Mike sat alone in the creaky living room. Cobwebs everywhere. Peeling floral wallpaper. A portrait of the original family seemed to watch him with eyes that followed. "Is anyone here with me?" he asked. For a minute, nothing. Then, faintly, a child's giggle echoed through the room. Mike's blood turned to ice. He asked more questions, but got no reply. Until he played back the recording. A raspy voice whispered, "Get out," right into the mic. There was also a sound like dogs growling softly. Mike showed the owner the next day. He smiled nervously and said he wasn't surprised. His family had fled decades ago after his little sister Anna got possessed. She was playing in the yard when she suddenly froze, eyes rolling back in her head. By nightfall, she was speaking in tongues and floating above her bed. A demon had taken her over, the singing woman James heard. When religious leaders failed to exorcise it, the family moved away to escape the evil entity's clutches. But the mansion remained haunted to this day. The owner thought Anna's spirit was trapped there, along with the demon. He warned Mike to never return, because whatever dwelled inside was always hungry for fresh souls to possess. As Mike left, he felt as if unseen eyes watched him from the broken windows. This place was cursed, without a doubt. All you could do was to pray that you are lucky enough to escape with your soul still intact. The second story took place in the small town of Elmwood. Hadn't been the same since the summer of '75 when the killer clown first appeared. That was the year 3 local kids went missing, just vanished on their way home from school. There were no clues, no suspects, nothing. Until eyewitnesses started reporting a strange man dressed as a clown lurking around town. It started with just brief glimpses, a flash of crazy red hair and a painted white face. Then a teacher saw the clown outside the playground, waving at the children. The police were called, but he always managed to disappear before they arrived. Sightings increased over that long summer, along with unease among the townsfolk. Parents wouldn't let their kids out alone to play. By fall, with the children still missing, things took an even darker turn. The mutilated bodies of animals started appearing around town: rabbits, cats, dogs, painted up like twisted clown faces. It was a sinister calling card if there ever was one. The police hunted fruitlessly for the psychopathic clown. He remained elusive, aided perhaps by his elaborate disguises and costume changes. The final straw came on Halloween night. A costumed couple was found murdered, posed in a horrific tableau, the woman dressed as a clown in colorful wig and grease paint, mouth cut into a Glasgow grin, the man dressed as a lion, limbs contorted unnaturally. The work of the killer clown, without a doubt. The town was gripped by terror. Parents kept children home from school. Travel after dark ceased. But the clown vanished as suddenly as he had arrived. The missing children were never found, their fate remaining a mystery. For decades after, the town was haunted by the case of the killer clown who was never caught. Suspects were investigated unsuccessfully. Some say he moved on to another town. Others believe his twisted spirit still lurks in Elmwood, waiting to emerge once more. Either way, the town would never be the same again. The third story begins in Cleveland in the 1930s, was terrorized by a serial killer who became known as the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run. From 1935 to 1938, the decapitated and dismembered remains of 12 victims were found in and around Kingsbury Run, a depressed area along the river. The Mad Butcher's first victims were found naked and expertly dismembered, body parts scattered. As the body count grew, only the severed heads and genitalia of victims were being left behind. Police believed the killer possessed surgical skill given the brutal but meticulous cuts. The city was gripped with fear as the slayings continued with no suspects identified. Some theorized the killer was a butcher or hunter by trade given the bone saw cuts. Others thought a crazed doctor might be responsible. All police knew was that a depraved madman haunted the shantytowns of Kingsbury Run. Fingerprints and blood work proved fruitless. No murder weapon was ever recovered. Police sought any lead they could, probing mental hospitals, vagrancy records, and sex offender movements to no avail. With no witnesses or evidence left behind, the killer's identity remained shrouded in shadows. Some believed the victims were drifters, easy prey for the killer to capture unnoticed. Prostitutes also came under suspicion as targets. But only one victim was ever identified, Edward Andrassy, whose decapitated head washed up from the river. The other bodies were too damaged to be recognized. As World War II approached, the gruesome murders inexplicably ceased. Cleveland hoped the Mad Butcher had left for good or been imprisoned on unrelated charges. Still, questions lingered. Who was this faceless monster that stalked Depression-era Cleveland, leaving savaged bodies in his wake? Some believe an escaped mental patient named Frank Dolezai was the killer, though never charged. To this day, the Mad Butcher's identity remains unknown. The horrific, unsolved Kingsbury Run murders continue to haunt Cleveland as a grim, bloodstained mystery in the city's history. The fourth story started as a sunny Saturday morning in 1989 when 8-year-old Michael Wilson vanished while riding his bike around the neighborhood. His mom Jenna last saw him after breakfast when he asked if he could go play. She cautioned him not to talk to strangers or go too far. But when lunchtime came and went with no sign of Michael, Jenna became worried. She walked the neighborhood calling his name with no luck. Panic set in and she called the police. They launched search parties, scouring nearby woods and ponds. But the only trace was Michael's abandoned bike, found laying in the park. Detectives went door to door talking to neighbors. Some reported seeing a faded blue van cruising around that morning. Others remembered Michael chatting with the ice cream truck driver earlier that summer. But no solid leads emerged. Weeks passed with no breaks in the case. Michael's face was plastered on telephone poles and milk cartons, part of a campaign to find missing children. His parents held tearful press conferences pleading for his return or any information. But it seemed Michael had simply vanished without a trace. Despite exhaustive investigations over decades, the truth of what happened to Michael remains a mystery. Some believe he was kidnapped by a predator who lured him away and murdered him. Others think he may have run away or gotten lost in the woods. Without a body or witnesses, police had little to go on. 30 years later, Michael's case remains unsolved, his parents left without closure. They still hope someday he will walk through the door. But as time passes, that chance slips further away. Sadly, Michael's story is similar to so many other milk carton kids who disappeared without explanation, leaving frightened parents, baffled police, and unanswered questions in their wake. Though strangers' danger education has improved, child abductions continue plaguing communities today. Solving these tragic puzzles often proves impossible, the fates of lost children haunting a town forever. Our final story begins with the prosperous Borden family lived in a stately Victorian house in Fall River, Massachusetts. In 1892, the town was shocked when Andrew and Abby Borden were found violently murdered there. Andrew was a successful businessman and Abby his second wife. The prime suspect, Andrew's daughter Lizzie, who lived with them. The morning of the murders, the maid Bridget was resting upstairs when she heard Lizzie call out that her father was dead. Andrew was found slumped on a couch, brutally hacked to death with an axe. Abby was found shortly after in an upstairs bedroom, killed in similar fashion. Lizzie claimed a stranger must have entered and killed them both while she was in the backyard barn. But her odd demeanor, calm and unaffected, aroused suspicion. And there were no signs of forced entry. Police searched for a murder weapon and uncovered a hatchet in the basement, broken and missing its handle. Though Lizzie was the main suspect, no physical evidence definitively tied her to the crimes. But the circumstantial evidence mounted. Lizzie had quarreled with her stepmother and disliked her thrifty father, hoping to inherit his wealth. She also purchased poison a week before, claiming it was to kill rats. Police announced they had solved the case, certain Lizzie was the murderer. But with elite lawyers hired, she was acquitted at trial and set free. The actual truth behind the gruesome murders remains uncertain. Most believe Lizzie did indeed commit the crimes, wielding the broken hatchet found on the property. Her female gender made police underestimate her capacity for violence. Her stone-faced demeanor hid a simmering inner rage. Interest in the infamous case endures today, captivating true crime fans. The grisly axe murders in quaint Victorian-era Fall River still inspire debate, books, films, and tours. Most agree that though justice was never served, the strange and seemingly psychopathic Lizzie Borden got away with viciously killing her parents that fateful August day. The house now operates as a macabre bed and breakfast for those daring enough to spend a night within its walls, echoes of the past still roaming the halls.